All right, so in today's session, we will talk about the management groups. Okay, what is the management group and how it is going to help us? And we'll also talk about the subscription and it's a hierarchy. So you will have the management group, subscriptions, you will have the resource groups, and then you will have the resources. Right, this is the hierarchy. And before the management groups, you will have the your account, your user account, and then you'll have the your Azure Active Directory. Okay, so this is the process. You have it. This is again, we did learn about setting up the organization on the cloud with the Azure AD. Then once you have the organization set up, you have your account, and with that account, you got your subscription, right? So you got a subscription directly, but when you get a subscription, you will have the management group that by default, it says the root management group. Okay, so root MG, and within the root MG, you will have your subscription associated. So you can have multiple management groups in your Azure environment. You can say one management group for the production, and one management group for your core infrastructure. Let's say core MG, and if you have a dev test environment, you can say in dev or hyphen test, or maybe let's say dev hyphen MG management group. So in each management group, you can have multiple subscriptions as well. Let's say you have the production resource group. Sorry, I shouldn't say this resource group. Sorry, it's my bad. It should be MG. Okay, it cannot be RG. It should be MG. Okay. Okay, this is MG, and within the management group, you can have the multiple subscriptions, subscription 1 and subscription 2 and subscription 3 and so on. Okay, likewise, each management group might have multiple subscriptions. Maybe it can have the one subscription as well. Okay, and this is what even you see in your enterprise environment. You might see multiple management groups and multiple subscriptions. The question here is, why do we need multiple management groups in the first place? As I say, the name it says management, production management group, which means if you have, you know, large environment in your enterprise organization, and you want to segregate the environment, segregate the subscriptions based on the environment. So that it will be easy for you to apply certain policies and apply permissions, or you want to look at the billing in a different way. So this is all going to help you. So that's why we create production management group here, and we'll create all the subscription related to the production workloads will be added to this production management group. So that, then what is there in the core management group? So core management is nothing but your core infrastructure. That is where you'll have your firewalls, your checkpoint devices, maybe your quality scan, antivirus scan devices, your core identity and access management. Let's say you have Active Directory components. So the core infrastructure can be placed into the infrastructure services can be placed into the core management group. And dev management group, let's say you are into a product development organization, you want to perform some POCs or dev test. Maybe let's say you migrated an application from on-prem to Azure. Before you move them to the production, you want to perform some development activities, test activities or QA activities there, instead of deploying them into the production, because production is something that live data is being accessible by users. And dev test, you might need to have some exceptions. Sometimes you might have to open certain ports to the internet as well. So that is the reason. So we'll have a separate subscriptions for such kind of development and testing activities. So we create a development management group, and we'll keep all dev subscriptions into this development management group. Now, the question here is, okay, so we understood why we have the multiple management groups here. Okay, and now let's go to the subscriptions. So why we need a multiple subscriptions here? let's say I have one subscription, and within the one subscription, now I can have my prod resources. Let's say I have the production workloads. Let's say I have a group of applications running in the production subscription, right? Why do I need to have a multiple subscriptions here, right? So just a second. Okay, I'm sorry for that. So we'll have we can have one subscription and place all resources into one subscription, right? So why we have multiple subscriptions under the production category, right? It's all again, business to business, right? You have multiple customers, okay? And maybe let's say have one multiple applications. So you can define the subscription one, okay, for set of customers. Okay, let's say the applications, okay, belongs to specific category. Let's say you have applications into different business. Let's say you have a couple of applications related to the e-commerce, couple of applications related to the retail business, okay, and couple of them related to the banking sector, okay. So you, if any customer, right, this application, you are developing this application, your organization, and this application is being used by multiple end customers, right, multiple other companies. So you might have multiple applications into these categories, and multiple customers might start purchasing it. So you can call one subscription for retail customers, another subscription for banking, the another subscription for the e-commerce related, customers, where you deploy all your application related to e-commerce, and the another subscription you'll have the, customers who have the retail application that is purchased. So what you are going to do in this subscription, let's say if I'm taking a banking application, right? So in the banking applications, maybe you have a couple of applications into the banking related category, application one, application two, and application three, right? You might have multiple applications, and each application maybe needed a couple of servers, let's say around 10 servers for each application. That includes the web servers, database servers, it includes the application servers, and it also include other, batch job servers, or any other resources as well. It's not always the virtual machines, right? It can be, storage account, it can be, some other components as well within Azure environment. Likewise, you have, three applications, and overall, let's assume you need around 40 servers for these applications, and let's say 40 virtual machines example, right, for these three applications. And like you have, let's say around 50 customers who enroll for this. So 40 into 50, which is approximately 2000 servers you're going to have it, right? So 2000 servers you're going to put on this one subscription. So in that case, your customers might keep on growing, your server count keep on growing, right? In that case, it's not a bad idea to have a separate subscription for this banking related category applications, right? Similarly, for the retail application category, right, you have subscription too. You might have, let's say, 5,000 servers, which is around like 50 customers or 60 customers who want to use this retail based applications. And similarly for the e-commerce related. So that is the reason, that's one of the reason I'm saying you might have multiple subscriptions in your enterprise environment. And it's again, I just took one of the example, right? Maybe in the, based on the customers or based on the environment, you might have different uh, different approach, or maybe different reason why they are choosing the multiple subscriptions, right? Probably there are some situations, let's say, you have a customer, right? You have a customer one, um, the customer has the on-premises data center. They have around, let's say, 3,000 servers, 3,000 VMs, which they want to migrate to the cloud. So you already have a subscription one, okay? There you have a couple of customers and their applications running. And let's say the server count is already 5,000 or plus, right? 5,000 or more. So are you going to keep these 3,000 servers into the same subscription? may or may not be, right? Because this is a different customer. You want to isolate the resources based on the customer. So you want to create one subscription for one customer. If the customer is very big, the customer has multiple VMs or resources in it, you create one subscription. And these 3000 VMs, if I want to keep in the same one, it may not work, right? It may be a compliance issue, it can be other issues. So that's why what we do, we build another subscription. We purchase another subscription and tag to the same Azure AD, and we just add this to the production management group and move all this for 3000 virtual machines to the subscription too. So with this approach, right, you can segregate the network communication, you can segregate the certain policies and the permissions based on the subscriptions. That's one of the reason why we have the multiple subscriptions in the Azure environment. Okay, so this is one of the reason. And when it comes to the sub uh, resource groups, right, each subscription will have the resource group where you are going to place your applications. So here, if I take an example of this, you have 3 applications, right? So how are you going to do this? But 3 applications, you have a 50 customers. How you are going to deploy these resources? Let's say, just think the resource group concept is not there, right? You are creating 2000 virtual machines in the subscription 3, right? In the At the end or eventually, okay, if you want to understand the server 1 or maybe server 100 belongs to which customer, it's really difficult, right? Maybe let's say you have an outage at Microsoft, right? There are like 10 virtual machines that are impacted. And how do you identify which customer those servers are belongs to, or which application those servers are belongs to, right? It's little difficult. And let's say you have 50 customers. You want to understand what is the billing for customer 1, how many VMs or how many resources customer 1 have in the Azure environment, and what is the billing for it, how much is being charged from by Microsoft. It's really difficult to understand, right? Maybe you have customer 1 and customer 2. Customer 1 has a different contract, customer 2 has a different contract. And for the customer 1, you cannot apply high compute. Maybe let's say you cannot use the customer high compute, let's say high CPU, I don't know, high memory resources to customer 1, because he is in a low low business, or maybe let's say his pay rate is very low, what he's paying you is very low, right? In such scenarios, you want to apply certain policies. Your automation or maybe your administrators are not deploying the resources with the high capacity, right? You want to apply certain policies. And how do you apply? If you apply in a subscription level, all 2000 VMs will be impacted. That is the reason it's important to create resources, okay, belongs to the same customer into a group. We call it as a resource group. What we do is, we create a resource group based on the customer. Okay, so we create a resource group based on the customer and application, so that in future, right, um, if I want to see what are the applications running on for the specific customer, I will be able to see, and what are the resources running for a specific customer, I'll be able to see, and I'll be able to look at the building. I'll be able to apply certain policies in case in future, if this customer is contract is expiring, I can easily decommission these resources. That's the reason we need to have a resource group where you are going to create all resources belongs to this customer into the same resource group. All right, that's the reason we have this resource group concept. It is not only to group the resources, it's also important to understand what policies are applied for this customer, what is the billing method for this customer. You can do many things with the resource group concept, right? When you are when you are creating these resources, maybe for you, it's like, okay, you got a request from the application team and you are just selecting the resource group of this customer and deploying it. But when it goes to the management level, what they do is they create a custom use with respect to the building based on the resource group and customers. Even in the resource group, we have something called taggings. So with the tagging also, you'll be able to do many things. Okay, which we will talk in upcoming sessions. So that's the reason, you will have the multiple management groups, multiple subscriptions, and multiple uh, resource groups in the in Azure environment or enterprise environment. And within the resource groups, obviously you'll have multiple resources because you are deploying the applications for the customer. It could be a infrastructure component, it could be PaaS component, it could be SaaS related component, right? So if it is an infrastructure component, you might create a virtual machines. If it is a PaaS component, the same application will be running in the Azure Web Apps, right? Maybe mobile applications. Probably you might use it only application. Maybe you will be using only storage account where you just dump the data and try to access from an application. There could be various use cases, but eventually you will have multiple resources created in a one specific resource group, right? It's all about the large organization, where you see multiple customers coming up, multiple virtual machines, and multiple resources you're going to deploy. If it is a small and medium based company, you may not needed these many management groups, these many subscriptions. Probably you might have one management group. Let's try to design that for now. So what you generally do if it is small and medium based companies, if they um, let's say this is account. Okay, this is the account. Let's say I'm going to use Kamal at vvhitsolutions.com. This is my ID or an account, I would say. I'm using this account to sign up for the Azure for the first time. And so I will definitely get an Azure ID, as you all know. And the Azure AD tenant will be my domain name dot on Microsoft.com. If I do custom domain verification, my Azure AD domain name will be vvhitsolutions.com. All right, this is going to be my domain name. And within this, under this domain, what I'm going to have is I'm going to add a subscription. Okay, I'm going to add a subscription for the first time. Okay, let's say I'm going to add a subscription here. Okay, I'm going to add a subscription here. And when you add a subscription here, by default, the management group will be activated, will be available. You just need to go to management groups and just add or activate this management group. This is going to be a root management group. All right. And later you can add your subscriptions to this. If you want to add a sub-management group, let's say production, or let's say applications, or maybe you say management group 1 and 01. Okay, and the another management group you can say MC02. So what we do here is, okay, we'll have a two subscriptions, another subscription purchased, and we will say this is where you're going to deploy your core infrastructure. Okay, and this is where you're going to deploy your customers, or your applications, or your virtual machines, where applications will be running, or maybe it can be a databases, it can be any other Azure resources. Okay, the core infrastructure contains your AD, and you will have your certificate authority, you will have your let's say firewall. It could be a VM based firewall, which is a Palo Alto, or could be a Barracuda, any other firewall devices. You might have your Qualys scans, antivirus scans, tripwire applications, or maybe these are like antivirus scans, right? Probably you might have some other network devices or appliances in the core infrastructure. This is common for your organization, vvhitsolutions.com example, right? And so then what you are going to deploy in the other subscription is all depends on the business that you are into. Okay, so let's say you have an application, maybe let's say you're trying to migrate a couple of servers of a specific customer. Customer 1, you want to migrate their servers. Okay, you can just put them into this into the subscription, but you can segregate within the subscription. You can create a resource group for this customer, RG hyphen, let's say customer one, and let's say what does the environment it is a dev environment, maybe you can say dev, and 01. Okay, and if it is a production, you can say production. All right, this is going to be a production. And if it is a test, you can say this is going to be a test environment. Likewise, if you have you know, different customer two, let's say customer two here, right? You are going to create a new resource group again for based on the environment, and you're going to say it's a customer two. Likewise, for each customer, if they need multiple environments, you are going to create the resource groups for each environment and deploy the resources. It could be a migration from on-premise to Azure, or AWS to Azure, Google to Azure, right? Google Cloud to Azure, or probably maybe, you know, it's a new setup on the cloud. So like, you know, greenfield environment, right? So it can be any kind of scenario it is, right? So instead of creating multiple subscriptions, you are going to segregate these resources based on the resource groups. Now let's say customer one need the VNet, right? He need, let's say, 5 servers. Okay, and you are going to create a VNet for this customer one, and for the customer two also, you're going to create a separate VNet. All right, so likewise for each customer, you will have a one dev VNet, production VNet, test VNet, and each resources belongs to that environment will be placed in a environment specific resource groups. Okay, so with this, for us to apply policies or, you know, manage the permissions or to view what's going on, it will be very easy. So that's the reason we'll have the multiple management groups, multiple subscription resource groups, and resources. It's a small and medium organizations where they don't have you know, server count, maybe they are not going beyond 5,000 or 10,000, then this is still works. Even if it is 10,000, still one subscription can be manageable. But if it is going beyond that, you might see challenges. At that time, you can have another subscription purchase and put it in the same management group. All right, same management group. That's a subscription too. Okay, you can put in the same management group and follow the same approach what you're following here. You know, customer specific resource groups, and deploy based on the environment and start deploying it. So this is how you can reduce the number of subscriptions. Okay, but eventually this might give you some overhead in terms of managing the multiple resource groups. You know, that could be one of the reason. Otherwise, it's perfectly works. You know, in case if you think that, you know, data from customer one to customer two might be, you know, some data leak might happen, maybe data breach might happen. If you think if there is any compliance or security related stuff, then this approach may not work. So in such scenarios, you buy one subscription for one customer, then deploy all its resources into that subscription. And there is no limit of, you know, having multiple subscriptions under your Azure AD, right? So you can create a number of subscriptions, and you know, you will be built based on the number of resources that you are creating or, you know, running in your subscription. It's not like, you know, you have 100 subscriptions, you are going to pay more for it, right? It's not the situation. So this is all, you know, when somebody come to you and ask for, okay, I want to start moving to the cloud, probably, you know, I want to deploy my resource in the cloud. So the design, maybe the this you know, the landing zone creation, maybe subscriptions, maybe subscription type, be it an enterprise agreement or, you know, MOSP or CSP. It's all designed or defined based on your requirement and your future growth, right? So we will keep all these things in the mind before we define anything, because you define something and you start deploying resources and you see challenges and you want to change the design, it's going to be little or more tough, I would say, because you have to make a lot of changes. It's not like, you know, you can just delete this and recreate it, right? by the time you realize that this design is not correct, there could be a lot of resources already deployed, and maybe a couple of them already in live as well, right? So this could be these are the things that we have to consider before we start deploying any resource in the cloud. Okay, and so that's all about the management group, subscriptions, and resource groups and resources. All right. Now let's have a recap of what you've learned so far, right? So if I start from the day 1 session, so you try to understand the different roles that you see in the Azure or cloud or enterprise environment. Then to set up that environment, you need to first set up the organization. That's where you started learning about Azure AD. And in Azure AD, you learn about how you can create a user. Maybe let's say instead of saying users, I would say how you can create account for your colleagues, right? New joiners. You create accounts for new joiners, and later how you give access to them in a Azure AD level to applications, or how you provide them the licenses, access, or probably how you can provide access to the subscriptions. Now we learned about subscription and what are the subscription types and how you get a subscription. And you learned about management groups, resource groups, and resources, the best practices in terms of management groups, subscription, resource groups, and resources. Now, right? So let me show you that in the an Azure portal so that you will understand these things which I just explained you. So let me log into the Azure portal. So logging into portal.azure.com. Yeah, so as you all know that this is the test subscription what we have it's not the real cloud environment. Though you see vhitsolutions.com is a domain name, it's just a domain that we purchased to show you the labs, but it's not a real organization that is registered anywhere, right? So we don't have any real environment, but I'm trying to show you the management groups and all. So first of all, you can see what is your active directory here, right? So right now my subscription or my account is active with the vhitech.com, but what I want to switch is I want to switch to vhitsolutions.com. So I'm going to switch to vhitsolutions.com directory, which is my Azure AD. So with this you understood, right? One account, one user account can be part of multiple Azure Active Directories as well. All right. So now if I go to this directory, you can see there are multiple subscriptions. Obviously, they are disabled. That's totally fine with us, because we are just trying to see options. We are not in the real time at the moment, right? So, so you see the Azure AD and you see the subscriptions. And if I go to the resource groups, you see the resource groups. And if I go to the resources, let me go to all resources. And these are the resources of different subscriptions. Okay. Now, if I go to the management groups, all right. So this is about the management groups. This is the tenant root group, which is like the root management group, which is associated with your Azure Active Directory. And within this, I've created one, two, three management groups. So the modern applications is where your application servers that are going to be deployed. Application one, customer one, which I just explained you, right? So that is one of the example. And the production is something that where you see your core infrastructure components like Active Directory, DNS, and certificate authority and firewall appliances. That's what you can configure it. And the other one is like your other application subscriptions. So right now I have 4 subscription, but they are all disabled. Okay, so I just added them here. I can always move the subscription from one management group to another one. I just need to click on move. Since these subscriptions are disabled, I'm not able to move them from one management group to another management group. Okay, but in general, each management group you will see subscriptions added. And if you wanted to apply policies and permissions, what you can do is you can go to IAM, Identity and Access Management, click on Add Role Assignment, and select the role that you want to assign to the users or a group. It can be a owner permissions. It can be a any others built-in permissions. If you want to assign, just click on select them and select the members and give them access. Example here, right? So when you give them access and save it, it's gonna give access to the all the subscriptions within this management group, all the resource groups within this management group, and all the resources as well. So it's like it's a top level, and the permissions are inheriting from the top level to the bottom level. Okay, that's how they're inheriting. And the same thing with the policies. This is called Azure policies. The Azure policies and the Azure permissions can be inherited from the management group to the subscription and subscription to the resource groups and its resources. Okay, so the policy is a different topic and it's a huge topic. And this is one of the key resource or key feature that's going to help organization to secure the environment, cloud environment, and as well as to manage the cloud governance in a better way. So I will talk about the policies in the upcoming sessions. What is the policy and how it is going to help us? Maybe not now. We'll start creating resources. Then you will see, you'll understand the resources, VMs, network, storage. Then we'll try to implement the policies so that you will be able to understand the benefits of the policies. Okay. So now we learned about this. In the next session, what I'm going to talk about is I'm going to talk about the um, permissions, like what are the built-in permissions, what are the service specific permissions, what are the custom permissions, what we have, how they are applied. We'll do some testing. You might have seen the same from my YouTube channel, other videos as well, but we'll try to demonstrate with the different use cases in the next sessions. Once that is completed, I will have to talk to you about the support plans and what are the outages happening at Microsoft. How do you validate the outages? How do you get notified for such outages? And what do you do when there is an outage at Microsoft? What is the process you are going to follow? How do you handle the outages, the critical situations, right? How do you communicate to the customers? That is what you're going to learn. So with that, the non-technical piece of it, a non-technical part of it will be completed. Then we'll try to start deploying the infrastructure. While deploying the infrastructure, we'll try to understand the best practices and the issues that we face it, how do we overcome and how do we troubleshoot. All right, so that's about the next sessions. And so far, whatever you have learned, right, what kind of questions you might expect from the interviewer? Maybe what kind of knowledge you can expect. I don't know, I expect, if I'm an interviewer, from the topics that you have covered, we have discussed, right? If I start from Azure AD and till today's subscription management and management groups and resource groups, I will try to give you some examples so that you can just be ready or just prepare more about it. Okay, so the first thing is about your, if somebody asks you what are your roles and responsibilities based on the topics that we covered so far, so then I would say, okay, I have been working on Azure for quite some time, let's say 1 or 2 years, and I was responsible for creating the user accounts and managing the user accounts by adding them to the groups, Azure Ready groups, and providing them access to the Azure Ready roles such as a global administrator, sometimes application administrators, sometimes user administrators. So adding to that, I used to provide access to the applications as well. So we have enterprise applications that are added to Azure Ready so that my on-prem AD users and cloud users can start accessing them. So from the one console, which is myapps.microsoft.com. So we configured single sign-on for those applications, and I always collaborate with the application team to configure SSO so that my end users will not see any issues with respect to the logins. So sometimes I also, get issues like tickets like, users are not able to access the cloud-based applications or SaaS-based applications. They say that they are not able to reset the password, they're not able to log in. So I kind of get into a call with them to understand where exactly they're stuck. Let's say they might be entering the wrong password, they might be entering from a different location, different devices. Probably we might have some conditional access policies. I'll go to Azure AD and first check the sign-in logs, because sign-in logs will give me what is the exact error. Before I get into the customer call, I usually check the sign-in logs to see what is the error that user account is getting. Is it your wrong user ID password? Probably a policy that is being blocked. So I'll check all these things before I get into the call with the customer. And adding to that, so we do have a large infrastructure hosted in the cloud environment. We have the multiple management groups and subscriptions and resource groups placed. So we have multiple applications deployed in the cloud environment. So whenever a customer, signed up a contract, we start deploying the infrastructure for them. So we deploy the resources based on the resource groups and based on the environment. Sometimes we have to buy a new subscription, though I don't have access, but I coordinate with our senior resources. So they buy a subscription and I have to apply the policies, I have to apply the permissions. Sometimes I get a request to provide access to the Azure subscription. No, I generally check what permissions I can apply for the user based on the role that he is actually is supposed to do it. So it's not only an Azure level, even an Azure AD level. If somebody asks me to provide a global admin permissions, I generally do not do it, because global admin permissions will give them like elevated privileges, right? So I'll try to ask them like, what is the business justification? Is it a temporary request? Is it a permanent request? Do we have the certain approvals from their management? So it could be any permissions. If a user is requesting, I want to follow this process so that the permissions or the roles are not misused, right? So these are the couple of things that I kind of do on a day-to-day basis. And adding to that, we have other components. We have virtual machines and backup. So obviously, guys, when we talk about the virtual machines, we'll also try to include the your roles and responsibilities part over there, so that you can try to cover that as well. Okay. So the questions might come like, um, the user is not able to access. What is the troubleshooting step that you perform? And user is not able to activate a stabilized entity management tool. He's not able to see the applications. So he's not able to see the subscriptions, probably because he's not into the right directory. You just need to say, go to this and check this, right? So likewise you get, and with respect to Azure AD, there will be a lot of questions. Application is not accessible, single sign-on is not working. So there are a few things which are in your scope, few things which are not in your scope. You need to connect to the customer to see what is exactly doing it, what is being configured from application side, and you can take it from there. All right. So as and when we move forward, you will see many questions. Maybe, let's say one of the example I would say, okay, I have a customer where they want to migrate to the cloud. So can you tell me how many subscriptions you are going to define? How many management groups you are going to define? Then in this case, you cannot answer the question. You cannot say, okay, I'm going to buy 10 subscriptions, 3 management groups, because Kamal told me in the call. Then you have to debate. You cannot say this answer to them, right? You have to debate, okay, how many servers you have? How are you going to use it, right? Is there any, are there multiple applications? Let's say if they say 3,000 servers, right? Are you going to deploy everything into infrastructure components, or do you want to go for a PaaS components as well, right? So if you want to, what is your future growth? Now, how many servers you are going to deploy in future? Then you can say, okay, let's deploy. So do you have any firewalls or anything that you are also trying to migrate, or you only, just migrating application servers? So based on these questions, you will try to answer it. You cannot simply directly say, okay, let's buy 2 subscriptions and start deploying the resources, maybe start performing the migration, right? It's not. Maybe, as in when we move forward, you will understand this further. We'll have a deep dive discussions on these kind of questions. So for you to you to get understanding about this. So that's all, guys, for today. I want to cover this. The next session, as I promised, we'll talk about the role-based access control, how we can apply the permission. Then we'll also talk about the service health outages and how we get alerts. All right. So that's all I want to cover today. And yeah, let's go for the Q&A.